Hello everyone! This video is meant to be a general overview of the circulatory system. So we are going to go over the function of the circulatory system, the primary component of the circulatory system, and the evolution of the circulatory system from fish to mammals. So let's go ahead and let's get started. So, what is the circulatory system? Well, first, it's also called the cardiovascular system, and its primary function is gas exchange. So when we inhale oxygen that is transported from the lungs to cells, and then CO2 is transported from the cells to the lungs to be exhaled. So when we are exhaling carbon dioxide. Now, if you recall, in the lungs are air-filled sacs called alveoli, and surrounding the alveoli are blood vessels, and it is at those blood vessels where gas exchange is taking place. Now, another function of the circulatory system is the transport of glucose to bodily tissues to provide energy for certain bodily processes. It also is involved in the transport of waste. So during protein digestion, there's the production of ammonia, which is very toxic. And so we have to detox it by converting it to urea at the site of the liver, and then we convert the urea to urine at the kidney, and then it is expelled from the body. It also is involved with the endocrine system, and of course hormones are what are maintaining bodily homeostasis, and hormones are also important in other mechanisms such as reproduction. So just a quick overview, there are two types of circulatory systems. In the open circulatory system, blood leaves vessels and then enters the body cavity, bathing the organs that are inside. However, there is no blood pressure once the blood leaves the vessels. This type of circulatory system is found in insects. There's also a closed circulatory system where we have the blood contained in vessels, and so we do experience blood pressure, and we also have valves within our heart, right? And so this particular system is found in vertebrates, annelids, and cephalopods. Now, also another quick overview of the cardiovascular circuits. There are two types. There's the pulmonary circuit, which is the circuit between the heart and the lungs. And there's also the systemic circuit, which is the bodily circuit at the upper and lower half of the body. Now, because the circulatory system is dealing primarily with blood is its main component, it is important to know just what blood is. So blood is connective tissue that's circulating through arteries and veins, delivering substances throughout the body. Blood is composed of blood cells and plasma. So blood cells, there are two types. There are erythrocytes. These are your red blood cells that deliver oxygen to body tissues. And a lot of you may be familiar with the word hemoglobin. You've definitely heard it if you are in biology. You've definitely heard it throughout your daily life. Hemoglobin is in the cytoplasm of red blood cells. It is in essence just a biomolecule that is binding to the oxygen. The other type of blood cell is a leukocyte. These are your white blood cells that combat disease. There are several types that we'll probably get into in another video more in depth. They are your lymphocytes, your granulocytes, monocytes, and your macrophages. Now also, within blood is the plasma. And in the plasma is where you're going to find water, you're going to find salts, you're going to find nutrients, you're also going to find any hormones that may be circulating throughout the body, any proteins such as albumin, and you'll also find platelets, which are the clotting factors that are also called thrombocytes. Alright, so now that we've gone over the function of the circulatory system and the primary component of the circulatory system, let's go ahead and let's look at the parts of the heart. So the heart is made up of fluid-filled chambers, one of which is the atria, or atrium if it's singular, and the atrium is where blood is being collected. In the case of the mammal, if it's the right atrium, it's collecting deoxygenated blood from the body, and if it's the left atrium, it's receiving or collecting oxygenated blood from the lungs. So it is just the collecting fluid-filled chamber. The ventricle is collecting blood from the atrium. The ventricle is the pump. So think of the atrium as the sink. So all the blood is being collected by the atrium. It's being sent to the ventricle, and the ventricle is pumping that blood out through the systemic arch to the rest of the body. So let's go ahead and let's go over quickly the evolution of the heart. Basically, we're going to look at the chambered heart from fish to mammals and how it's different. So if we begin with sharks and fish have a two-chambered heart, so that means they have one atrium and they have one ventricle. You have the sinus venosus that's receiving deoxygenated blood from the hepatic and common cardinal veins. The sinus venosus is then pumping that blood to the atrium or sending the blood to the atrium. The atrium is sending blood to the ventricle, and the ventricle is going to pump the blood through the conus arteriosus to the gills for gas exchange. Amphibians have a three-chambered heart, so there are two atria and one ventricle. The right atrium is receiving deoxygenated blood from the cardinal and the hepatic vein. So now reptiles also have a three-chambered heart, and for the most part it is fairly similar to amphibians, so you have two atria and one ventricle, and then oxygenated and deoxygenated blood is mixed in the ventricle. However, in the case of the lizard, snake, and the turtle, if we look at chelonians and the lepidosaurs, and the chelonians are the turtles and tortoises, lepidosaurs are snakes and lizards, they have a three-chambered heart, so they still have two atria. But the ventricle is actually divided by two septa, so it's divided into three regions. And this allows for the separation of deoxygenated and oxygenated blood. And it also allows for what's called cardiac shunting. So if we look in the case of the turtle, turtles will often spend a good amount of time underwater. And they don't have gills, so they have to do gas exchange through a different process. They actually use what's called cloacal respiration. And so shunting of blood through the ventricle and cloacal respiration are going to go hand in hand for breathing in certain instances where air is not available. Alright, so we're now here at the mammalian heart. The mammalian heart is a four-chambered heart, so two atria and two ventricles. The right atrium is receiving deoxygenated blood from the pre- and post-cava. The left atrium is receiving oxygenated blood from the lungs. So you'll notice that this is the same in the amphibians and the reptiles. So the right atrium is receiving deoxygenated blood, the left atrium is receiving oxygenated blood from the pulmonary circuit. So the two ventricles, the right ventricle is receiving the deoxygenated blood from the right atrium and pumping that blood through the pulmonary trunk to the lungs. So the right side of the heart is involved in pulmonary circulation. The left ventricle is receiving oxygenated blood from the left atrium and then pumping that oxygenated blood through the systemic arch into the rest of the body. So the left side of the mammalian heart is involved in systemic circulation.